Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really fun video that I've been planning for a while, and I'm so excited to actually sit down and film it. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 fantasy romances that I think everyone should read. So all of these books, at one point or the other in my fantasy romance journey, I have consistently thought about the characters over and over and over again. All of these books I'm going to talk about are really great to kind of start your journey in the fantasy romance genre. Or if you have read fantasy romance for a while, this is your sign to pick up these books because they're all absolutely fantastic. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right into the first book that I have to talk about. And that is A Serpent of the Wings and Night by Carissa Broadbent. I absolutely love this Crowns of Nyaxia series. So this is actually a duet. So it's 2 books and you get their full story. So Serpent of the Wings of Night is the first book in the duet, and it follows Araya and Rain. Araya is our female character, and you see that she is starting out in these kind of like games. It's kind of like the Hunger Games, but they have a lot of different other people that have different magic types and how they use them and weapons and abilities and stuff like that. So it's definitely more magical, obviously. And I really like the world building. One thing I love about Carissa Broadbent's writing is that the world building is actually very easy to catch on to. So it's not like you're thrown in and you have no idea what's going on. So Araya's like adoptive father, he rules the House of Night, and you see that she does not have any magical powers. She is just a little human. They call her like the little serpent or whatever like that. But her father does have powers. So basically what she's doing is she's entering these games to try and get powers. If she wins, she can ask the goddess for powers or attach her dad's abilities to her, or who she calls her father. And I really found it interesting, and while she's at these games, she meets Rain. Rain is our main male character, and he is the one that she starts to have a romance with. It is very much enemies to lovers, but what I like about this is Araya is not just a naive little female character. She is very powerful in her own way, and she is very badass, and I really love that about her. So highly suggest this duet if you haven't read them already. I'm really excited that actually Carissa Broadbent got picked up by a publisher for this series, so extremely excited about that. It's well deserved, so definitely check out this series. The next book I want to talk about is one of my first fantasy romance I've read, and that is Radiance by Grace Draven. So in this book, it's an arranged marriage, friends to lovers romance, and what makes it so interesting, and I haven't read any other book like it, is that you see our female character, she is human, so she is a creature of the day. She and her people are awake during the day, and she is married off to Rishin, and he is a Kai. So he is a person of the night. They are awake during the night, where they're sensitive to sunlight. It's very much like a monster, but like kind of still human a little bit. They have different teeth, they have claws and stuff like that. So it is one of those things where they don't physically find each other attractive because they are completely different like species, but they are both forced into this arranged marriage for the sake of, you know, like a political marriage, and so they have to get along, and they find this like natural friendship that leads to a romance, and I found it absolutely beautiful. So in this book is like their journey into that friendship, into that romance, and you really dive into how they coexist with each other and stuff like that. But then the second book, which is Eldalon, is more of them being together, ruling their kingdom together, all of those things that kind of come up. So you don't have to continue with the second book. It took me quite a few months to continue because it doesn't necessarily end on a cliffhanger, but I really loved both books. I think that this is such a short fantasy romance, and the world building is actually very easy to pick up, even though it's a completely different world. And you do have someone that's human, but like the world is not set up like ours is. And I just found it really interesting. They have those political aspects, and you have different kingdoms and different species and different people and all of that stuff. And I've really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite friends to lovers fantasy romance. And I feel like we don't get a lot of friends to lovers fantasy romance because everyone loves enemies to lovers, but this one is very underrated, so definitely pick up this one if you haven't already. The next book I want to talk about is A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Milivane. This is one of my absolute favorite fantasy romances. I'm going to say this about every book, but this one is very interesting the way Milivane wrote it. So this has a lot of great tropes of representation in here. Our main male character is kind of like a Viking. You see him, he is taking over his, I want to say clan, but he's ruling over his people, and you see that his parents passed away because of our female character. He is told that our female character is the one that killed him, so he makes it his mission to go find our female character and kill her. Yuvine is not necessarily what Matic expects. She is very fragile on the outside. She is very small, and she looks very fragile and weak. You know, she is missing a finger. She limps. She walks with a limp. She had an injury. Someone smashed her knee and it never healed right. So you have all these different things, but she is one of the strongest female characters I have ever read. And then you have on the opposite side Madoc, who is this very big, brooding, muscle, like Viking man, and he very strong on the outside, but he is kind of like missing that emotional piece. And while it is very much enemies to lovers, I wouldn't even say enemies, it's like hate to love, their romance that blossoms in this book is absolutely beautiful. It is a perfect blend of fantasy and romance because it's, you know, you have the politics of the different people, and you have warring clans and warring people. You have goddesses and gods that come into play that I think Millie Vane really does explain exceptionally well. And then you also have this romance that's supposed to be, oh, I'm supposed to get revenge on her because of what she did to my family and my parents. But then on the other side, he's like, but why am I starting to feel something for her? And they complement each other very well, not only because they're complete opposites on the outside. They have this connection that they both are missing a piece of themselves, and they find it in each other. And that's the best way I can explain it, but it is a very beautiful story. I absolutely love it. While it is very long, I would still highly suggest reading it. I've heard the audiobook is pretty good, but definitely pick this up if you haven't already. It's another underrated fantasy romance that I think everyone should read, especially if you're newer to fantasy romance, because the world building is described in a way that is very easy to digest. First 100 pages is, you know, it takes a little while, but I think once you get past that, it is such a beautiful book. The next one I have is A Court of Blood and Bindings by Lisette Marshall. So this is actually a trilogy. The trilogy is now complete, but the first book, when I read this, it completely hooked me. I listened to the audiobook and it was absolutely phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. You see our female character, she is kind of like living in this castle where her parents are just, you know, ruling and stuff like that. But then you see our main male character, he's called the Silent Death, and he comes and she sees him and she freaks out. She runs to her parents' chambers and she's like, I saw the Silent Death. He's here. He's going to take over. He's going to kill everyone. And they're like, what are you talking about? No. Well, then everyone goes to sleep and she wakes up and her parents have left. He is completely destroying their castle, well, not the castle, but the town where, you know, her parents ruled. And he takes her captive. They call him the Silent Death because he never speaks. And also when he kills people, no one screams. And a lot of things come out about our main male character. He does not speak because the queen of where his kingdom has taken his ability to speak. And she can only talk to him, and he can only talk to her. And it's very interesting the way that she is kind of like forced proximity, they're forced together. He takes her captive, I will say, but he has his own agenda and those things start coming out. And it is an exceptional romance. I feel like the romance is very heavy with this. The world building is very simplistic. It is not hard to get into, but this is definitely more of a romance, heavy fantasy romance, and I did not mind it. There's a lot of aspects that come into play. This doesn't on a cliffhanger. Like I said, it's part of a trilogy, but all 3 books are out now, so you can definitely just like fly through the trilogy. I just found that Creon was so beautiful, and like you don't expect the things that I wouldn't say talks about, but like the things that come up about him, you don't expect it, and it really made me like tear up, and I felt for him. I felt for her too, because she didn't know what was going on. She had no idea of his agenda. She's trying to figure things out and help him in any way they can, and, you know, take down the queen and all these things like that. And it's a very cool book with a lot of different plot twists that I didn't see coming. So it's a very romance heavy fantasy romance. If you're looking for one, definitely check out this one. The next book I have to talk about is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This is another fantasy romance where it is very much enemies to lovers, but our female character is an assassin, and she has been trained from very young with all of these other girls, and basically it's the survival of the fittest type of a thing, so whoever survives at the end when they're older. The prologue and first chapter of this book was very catching. Like, it dragged me in and I could not stop reading it. It's just, you don't expect what's gonna happen. And it's all these twists and turns right off the beginning, so that's why it drags you in, and I really loved it. The audiobook is fantastic too. But basically, she is the assassin that is sent to our main male character's kingdom, because he rules a kingdom, to take him down from the inside out. So she is supposed to make him fall in love with her. She has learned all of these like lessons in seduction, going through this like assassin training and stuff like that, and she uses that to her advantage. But, of course, what we love of fantasy romance, she starts catching feelings for him, and it gets very twisted. She's like, I'm supposed to be loyal to my kingdom, but I have to take him down, but I'm starting to become loyal to him. She starts learning secrets about her own kingdom and her father and her family and the people who's trained her, and, you know, all of it. She's like, I don't know what to believe. Now, this one does kind of end on a cliffhanger, so it does continue in the next book, but I really liked the world building was very simplistic compared to some of these other books, which I really enjoyed. Like I said, it's relatively short for a fantasy romance, and I like those that are easy with the world building, because sometimes I want that fantasy romance that's not super heavy with the world building, because that can like, you know, take a lot for your brain to like digest. So I like that some of these books are a little bit easier with the world building, and this is definitely one of them. But if you're looking for that, like, take them down from the inside out assassin style where the female character is an assassin, definitely check out this. There are a lot of side characters that are introduced that she has written other books about, so definitely check out those. But I really like this fantasy romance. It's just a well-rounded fantasy romance. The next book I have is Between Wrath and Mercy by Jess Wisecup. So this is a book that went around, I want to say last year, maybe the end of 2021, but definitely into 2022. This is a very, very thick fantasy romance, but the reason why I wanted to put it in this video is because this is a fantasy romance where our female and male characters are older. I'm going to say they're in their late 30s, early 40s. So if you're looking for a little bit more mature characters in a fantasy romance, this is definitely for you. Our female character, you see, she has a daughter who is 18, and her daughter and her stepfather, you come to figure out what happened, but they go into town, go on a day trip, because it's very much an not historical style, but very much a older Renaissance era where they have to like go into town to get certain supplies and stuff like that. And then she finds out that someone comes running back where her husband and her daughter was attacked, and they took her daughter captive, and she is absolutely freaking out. She does not understand who took her. There's reasons why they kind of live in this kind of like remote area. So you see at the beginning, she had a twin sister, and her twin sister died. Her twin sister was very, very powerful, and that's why she died. And her daughter is the one that has that power again, and she's been keeping her in hiding because she doesn't want other people to find her and also kill her. So she has to go back to her home kingdom to ask for help, and that person is someone she used to have a past with. So it's a little bit of a second chance as well. But like I said, the characters are a lot older, so there's not that miscommunication, immature kind of plot points in the story and in the romance that come up. It is very mature. While they do have an attraction to each other, they know that they have to figure out where her daughter is, and he is very, very set on doing that. And I really enjoyed the story. It was all encompassing. While the beginning was just a tad slow to get into, Jess Wisecup really does build up the story in a way that it still draws you in. Like, you have a hard time putting the book down. While it is slow, it's builds up in a way that just drags you in, hooks you, and you don't want to stop reading it. So this is the first book in a series, so it definitely ends on a cliffhanger, but I really, really enjoyed this book. And if you're one of those people that are looking for a little bit more mature characters, definitely check out this book. The next book I have to talk about is Manacled by Cinlin Yu. So I recently read Manacled, and this is a fanfic. It's a Hermione fanfic, and I really hope that doesn't deter people from reading this. So you can basically down this on AO3 or Archive of Our Own. I'll have the link in the description box below. It's not affiliated or anything, but it's not a published work. She doesn't make money off of it. And it is a very long book. It's over 1,000 pages. And you don't have to know anything about Harry Potter. I don't know anything. I've never read the books. I barely watched the movies. Like, I watched them when I was younger, but I never like retained a lot of information. Like, I know the basics of it, okay? But with this Hermione fanfic, it is completely different from that world. I mean, there's obviously the same character names, but they're all like different. So basically, in this book, it is what if Voldemort won the war? So instead of Harry Potter, like in the movies, winning the war, it's Voldemort winning and what happens. And it's kind of like a mix of Handmaid's Tale if you've watched that show or read the book. But basically, our female character, Hermione, you see her, she is stuck in this cell that doesn't have any sunlight. She gets fed and that's it. No one talks to her. She can't speak. She can't use magic. She has these chains on her wrist. And then after 16 months, she is taken out. And obviously she has PTSD and a lot of anxiety, and she has panic attacks surrounding being out. But she learned that in that 16 months, the whole order is dead. Everyone is gone. And she is basically a sex slave, like a walking, talking incubator for Draco. She is assigned to Draco. But there is a whole list of other women that get assigned to more people that are like right under Voldemort, that's like high ranking people. Basically, it's to keep the magic population alive, like make babies, whatever. Draco is married in this, but his wife is barren. She cannot have kids, so that's why he's assigned Hermione. And the very beginning, it's broken them apart. So the first 25% is in the present. There's about 50%, so 25 to 75% is in the past. The last 25% is all in the present again. So there are so many twists and turns in this book that I was not expecting. Now, there is a lot of trigger warnings, so definitely check your trigger warnings. Lin Yu does a really good job of putting the trigger warnings in each chapter, like before you even start, so you can completely skip parts and stuff like that. So it is very, very, very well done with that, because like I said, there is a lot of triggers. But if you are looking for an all-encompassing fantasy romance that all you're gonna want to do is read this book is it. I'll tell you, I spent 5 days reading this book. It is very long. It took me like over 30 hours of actual reading time. And there was one Saturday when I got past 25% of the book where I sat in my bed for 15 hours. Obviously, I took breaks and stuff like that, but it was 15 hours that I just read and I could not stop reading. And then the next day I sat for 7 hours and finished the book. It was a wonderful, wonderful hate to love, enemies to lovers, lots of plot twists, lots of magic, which I really, really enjoyed. Even though Hermione doesn't have her magic, they put these like shackles on her wrist that block magic, but Draco has magic. You see the past too where she actually does have magic, so it is very, very, very interesting, and I absolutely loved it. The ending was bittersweet, but I loved it. I feel like I could talk about this book forever. I really, really enjoyed it. The next book I have is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. So if you are a big fan of ACOTAR, Rhysand, Cassian, Asriel, any of those characters in that series, obviously I didn't put them in this video because I feel like that's a classic fantasy romance that a lot of people have already read. I think that if you've read that series, you're going to love this series. So this is the first book in a trilogy technically, and it's very interesting with the hero. He's called the Bargainer, basically. Our female character, you see her very early on when I think she's 17. Something happens and she kind of summons this Bargainer, and basically you can make a bargain with him, get yourself out of trouble or anything. He can like basically grant you a wish or like anything you need because he has this magic, but you have beads tattooed on your hand. So you see, fast forward a couple of years, she is living in the human world. There's like 2 different worlds, so you can go between realms, like the human world, and then you can go to like the magic world. And I found it so interesting the way that Laura Thalassa wrote it, because it didn't feel like it was a lot of heavy world building, even though you technically have these 2 different worlds. Like I said, you fast forward a couple years, you see our female character. She has multiple beads, and our Bargainer comes in to cash in those favors that he granted her, and it is a very big favor, and I won't tell what it is because I feel like it's a little bit of a plot twist, but he does have wings, obviously. He is a magical being and creature. Like I said, I really like the way Laura Thalassa set up the human versus the magical realm. It gets very crazy at the end of this book. It does end on a cliffhanger, so you're definitely going to want to continue in the series, but I would highly suggest this book if you are looking for something similar to ACOTAR. I really loved it. The next book I have to talk about is just one that I'm going to throw out there just in case you have not read this, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I feel like this fantasy romance has taken Book Talk, Bookstagram, BookTube by storm this year since it came out. I think at the beginning of the summer. I picked this up at Barnes & Noble. I apparently have the first edition. I picked it up. It was out early. I didn't even know what it was. All I knew was a fantasy romance with dragons, and I thought, that sounds interesting. Little did I know that this would be one of my favorite books of the year. I personally think that it is worth the hype. I think that if you were looking for a new adult, college-esque fantasy romance with dragons, enemies to lovers, lots of secrets, lots of plot twists, lots of people trying to kill certain people, it's a survival of the fittest type thing. It is very, very, very interesting, and it also has great chronic illness rep. So our female character, she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or what would be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in this world. It's where your joints and the tissue surrounding your joints, and there's all these other things, but that's the main thing. So she lives with chronic pain too, and it is such a beautiful, beautiful book. I found it so fun. Like it's not heavy with the world building because it is in a separate world with dragons and stuff, but it's set in a college, so it's kind of like an academia book with obviously a lot of romance. Our main male character, Xaden, he has reasons for hating Violet, and Violet is like, I understand why you hate me, but like please don't kill me. I'm just trying to survive. Like I'm just trying to keep my family's legacy living and stuff like that. And I found it great. The dragons were great. The ending, I was like, what the heck? Why do we have this whole cliffhanger of an ending? But the next book comes out in November and I cannot wait. So this is just your sign. If you haven't read this yet, definitely pick it up. It is a very fun, a little bit light with the world building fantasy romance that I highly, highly, highly enjoyed. And the last fantasy romance I want to talk about is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. So this was my first Adeline Grace book, and while she does have some other books in her backlist, I really, really, really love this book. The next book, Foxglove, comes out this year, I think in August, at the end of August, and I'm super, super excited to dive back into this world. This is a very interesting, I wouldn't say YA, definitely new adult, and it just has these very interesting magic points, magic system, where a female character, she has just like, it seems like she has bad luck where everyone around her is just dying, but it's her, and she has basically what would be like the Grim Reaper following her and like coming up in her dreams and being around her, and she is shuffled from family to family because she's underage technically, so someone has to take care of her, and she finds herself in this house where a side character, she is like, I think her cousin is dying, but she realized she's getting poisoned by Belladonna, so it's kind of like this mystery aspect. This is a perfect fall book, so if you're looking for a book this fall to pick up this one. It is so great. I'm not going to say any more because I feel like there's a lot of plot twist that's going to be spoiled if I say anything else, but I went into this book blind, and I highly suggest doing that. It was great. It was a fantastic read, and I think I read it in like 2 days or something like that. But those are 10 fantasy romances that I think everyone needs to read if you were a fantasy romance lover, and or if you're new to fantasy romance. I just absolutely loved all 10 of these books. You can let me know in the comments down below if you have any others that you would love to add to this list. For the emoji, drop me like the wand emoji, a dragon emoji, a, you know, anything like that, a fantastical, the sparkle emoji, anything like that. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.